guys, so we're going to be starting lesson 1 in your chapter 5, unit 5, solving quadratic equations. So if you could open up your lesson book to that there, we're going to be talking about solving quadratics, and we're going to be doing that by factoring. You guys have done factoring in the past. Hopefully this is a bit of review, but basically you write your form like this. You set it equals to 0, you factor the quadratic, and then you set each factor to 0. So setting each factor to 0 and solving allows you to kind of figure out what the answer to this would be. Now remember, the idea of solving is like, hey, what x do I put in here to make this thing 0? So those are what we would call solutions. So in here we can just write solutions. So looking at something like this, if we follow those steps, right, we need to get it all set up like this on one side of the equal sign, so it said it's equals to 0. That's good. Some of them are not like that, right? This one, for instance, we'll do that in a minute. But then you just factor. So remember, this is what times what equals 15, and what adds to 8. Hopefully you kind of have reviewed this or remember this from the past, and you'd know that that's x plus 3 and x plus 5 is equal to 0. And then the next step is just setting each of those factors equals to 0. So what that means is x plus 3 equals 0. What is your answer here? Well, you'd move the 3 across and you get x equals negative 3. We remember that's the x-intercept, isn't it? That's the same thing as our solution here. It's always the opposite, if that helps you remember as well. When we're solving this, you move the 5 across and x equals minus 5. So that'd be how you do something like this here. These ones, this is just common factoring, right? So this is a little bit different. You can common factor an x out of both of these. X squared divided by x is x, and minus 7x divided by x is minus 7. And if you set both of those factors to 0, look at this one. That's just x equals 0, so that is the answer. And this one again would be x minus 7 equals 0. Move that 7 across and you get x equals 7. So those are your two answers. Those are what would be put in here to make this true. And that makes sense, right? 0 squared minus 7 times 0, well, that's 0 minus 0. This one, you need to make sure everything is on one side. So we're going to move that 12 across. That's the strategy for these here. So x squared plus 4x minus 12 equals to 0. And again, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to 4. And if you are up to speed on your factoring, you know that that would be negative 2 times 6 is negative 12, and negative 2 plus 6 is 4. So x minus 2, x plus 6. What are your answers? Well, they would just be x minus 2 equals 0, so x equals 2. And x plus 6 equals 0, so x equals, as you bring the 6 across, minus 6. This is a good tip here as well. It's just remembering to check for common factoring. So you should be able to divide each of these numbers by 2, and you're going to get much nicer numbers here. You're still going to get an answer that is the same in the end, but that's going to make our numbers a lot nicer when we think about what multiplies to 24 and adds to negative 11. And off the top of my head, I want to think 8 and 3. So negative 8 times negative 3, and negative 8 plus negative 3 would work here. So your factored form is x minus 8, x minus 3 equals 0. These are the two things that matter because they have an x in them. We don't really care about the 2 so much. So x minus 8 equals 0. You're going to get x equals to 8. And x minus 3 equals 0, you'd get x equals 3. Those are your two answers. All right, these ones here, and again, we're not far into this lesson, so we're not too much further that we need to go into this lesson here. These are a little bit trickier. These are the ones that would be, sorry, one second. I was just getting a phone call. So yeah, these ones are a little bit trickier if you remember factoring by decomposition. And so the trick was you did have to think about two numbers that not just multiplied to negative 3, but 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6. And again, still added to the middle number, which is 5. And so as you do that, right, this is going to be, let's see, -1 times 6 and -1 plus 6. And just remember that that is what needs to go into the middle as you break up 5x into -1x plus 6x, and then factor by grouping. So 0 equals, all I can take out here is an x. We get left with 2x minus 1, and a 3, and again 2x minus 1. As you divide 6 by 3, you're going to get 2x, and minus 3 divided by 3, you're going to get 1. So if you remember, x plus 3 is here, and 2 minus x minus 1 is here. Now these are a bit more interesting, because x plus 3 equals 0, yes, that one is still the opposite, x equals minus 3, but notice this one is a little bit trickier now that we have a 2 in front, because we're going to move the 1 across, so 2x equals 1, and then we divide the 2. So you actually get a half, and -3 for your answers there. All right, let's do like one more. So I'm not sure which is going to be a good one to do. Let's try this one here. Yeah, so this one, again, I actually see a nice number that we can common factor. X squared minus 3 equals to 0. But this can't really be factored anymore. It's not a difference of squares. It's kind of gross, actually, when you look at this one. So instead, we're just going to write it like this. X squared minus 3 is equal to 0, just like what we would have done if that was all finished factoring. You'd get x squared is equal to 3. And now at this point, you're actually going to have to use your calculator to take the square root. But remember, when you take the square root of something, there's actually a positive and a negative answer, right? If we had x squared equals 9, for example, that could have been 3 squared is 9 or -3 squared is 9. So it makes sense that there would be two numbers here as well. So when you do square root of 3 in your calculator, I'll just do that in mine here for you as well. Square root of 3 is 1.73. So you'd get positive 1.73 and you'd get negative 1.73. All right, so this one is going to be a little bit more interesting because when you try to do this, again, you can't factor this. There's no middle number here. It's not a difference of squares. It's not pretty. So you can just kind of pretend, hey, that's the whole thing there. And as we set that equals to 0, you'd go 3x squared equals to -1. X squared equals to -1 divided by 3. And then when you do the same trick we had on the other side, right, when you take the square root of -1/3, your calculator is going to say an error or it doesn't exist. And basically that is true. 3x squared plus 1, it's a parabola that is up here. It never has an answer that says equals to 0. It doesn't exist. And so basically that would be a valid answer for that question there. All right, you can go into your workbook now and you can complete a few questions. Let's see which ones would be good to get started here. These ones are just practicing going ahead and telling the factors right from the get-go. So I think you can do all of one quite quickly. And then number 2 gets you to factor ones with 1 in front and number 3 without 1 in front. So I don't think you need to do all those, but do enough that you feel confident. So let's write 1, 2, and 3 down and just keep going until you feel really confident with 1, 2, and 3 there. All right, team. Again, sorry for being absent today. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.